Okay, let's talk about picking hand technique. I'm going to start by showing you how I hold the pick. Now, you might find an accomplished guitarist who will not agree entirely with the way I hold the pick, but if you talk to a number of accomplished guitarists, you're going to find that what I'm showing you here is going to be typical. And especially if you look at some of the very accomplished, well-known modern guitarists like Joe Satriani or Paul Gilbert, for instance, you're going to find a pick technique very similar to what I'm showing you here. Okay, so let's start with the pick hold, and this is the way I'm going to grasp the pick. I'm going to start with a relaxed hand, and I'm simply going to lay the pick onto the side of my index finger, and then just close up my hand very naturally, very relaxed grip, and grasp the pick between the index finger and the thumb so that it ends up looking sort of like this. Okay. All right. Now, let me be clear that I am not putting the pick on the side of the forefinger, of the index finger, and nor am I putting it on the pad. I'm putting it kind of in between. Okay, notice how I have my hand angled here so that I can lay the pick on the finger, and then it'll simply balance itself there and rest. Okay, and then I just roll my fingers in the natural closing grip, and then grasp it with the thumb like so. I'm not putting a lot of pressure on the pick. I'm not going to use any more than I need to get the job done, just enough to hold the pick in place, and nor should I have to smash the middle finger against the side of my index finger here for extra support, because it just doesn't take that much strength. Okay, now let's talk about our interaction between our hand and the strings of the guitar. One of the first things that we learn to do in life as far as any kind of intricate control of our hands is, of course, writing. So here's how writing works. We grasp the pencil in this fashion, and we put the side of our hand down on the writing surface, and then we'll use a combination of moving the fingers and scrunching up the palm and rolling in and out to get our writing done. It's very complicated, and by the time we get old enough and physically big enough to have any kind of meaningful interaction with a guitar, we have become ingrained in this habit, this style of doing any kind of intricate motion with our hand. Okay, so here's what happens. We take out the pencil there and put in a pick, and then we tend to want to work the strings in the same way that we did the writing utensil. Same kind of motions. Okay, so we end up with this coming in at an angle like this. I call it dive bombing the strings. Okay, and we tend to move our fingers around a lot like this, and we're rolling in and out, squunching up the palm. Okay, and we don't need to do these things when we're manipulating the guitar strings, and in fact they're actually a hindrance. When we're addressing guitar strings, we want to start by utilizing the base of the palm, not the side over here. We want to go to the base and come down first and have that as our resting surface, and then we're going to come on down to the strings with the rest of the hand, and this is how we're going to manipulate the strings, with a side-to-side motion of the wrist. Now, I know if you look on the internet, you're going to find some videos with these dire warnings about using a side-to-side motion of the wrist, because it supposedly is going to cause carpal tunnel syndrome over time. Okay, now there is some validity to that. People do get carpal tunnel syndrome from overdoing with the guitar. The key here is you want to use a very efficient pick stroke. It only takes, the biggest of the guitar strings is probably less than 1 millimeter thick. You don't have to move very far to sound out a sound with a guitar string, and nor do you need to use a lot of strength. So it's very important to keep your hand relaxed. Don't smash the pick up against the side of your index finger. Use just enough force to hold the pick in place, and keep your forearm relaxed, and just use a very minimal, easy motion. It's the least required to get the job done. Okay, and then you can play your guitar for hours per day and you won't have any problems. All right. All right, so let's put the pick hold together with the physical approach to the strings that we talked about. Now I'm going to pull my sleeve back a little bit here so you can see exactly better what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm going to come in and I'm going to put the base of my hand down on the guitar, and then I've got my pick comfortably positioned between the index finger and the thumb. Now let's talk about the pick angle that we want to achieve here. And the pick hold, if you have the pick hold as I described previously, then your pick angle to the string should come in pretty close naturally. So you want a pick angle that is about roughly 30 to 45 degrees to the line of the string. So this is the direction of the strings, so we want the pick angle 30 to 45 degrees. Now, if you ever have tried to play with the pick against the pad of the index finger, here's what will happen. It will actually reverse the pick, and you will see there are some accomplished guitar players that actually play this way, but by far you'll see most accomplished players will have a pick angle of this nature. And also the pick, we want it pretty close to being straight up and down, being perpendicular to the strings. We don't want it at a severe angle either way. We want it pretty close to straight up and down, then about 30 to 45 degrees, and then make whatever slight adjustment you have to suit, your hand. Every hand is a little bit different. I play with the pick leaning a little bit this way, so it's going to be a little different for everybody. Okay, so now notice the angle that my arm is coming into the guitar. It's not extreme in either direction. It's kind of coming in about 30 degrees, I suppose. All right, so we're going to keep our hand down close and have the wrist on the guitar such that when you do a very comfortable natural back and forth motion, it's going to move the pick in the same plane as the strings. And by taking all these pieces together, what you come up with is a very efficient pick stroke. Very minimal motion required, very minimal muscular effort, and it's very, very fast without having to exert yourself a great deal. Okay, so now notice as I move up and down the strings, I'm going to do that with my arm. I'm not going to try to sit here and pick all the way down the strings and get at this extreme angle down here at this end, nor do I want to set up this way and try to come back up this way and then I get on this angle here, which is very difficult. I want to just move the whole assembly here of hand, wrist, and forearm in accordance with where I need to be to keep this pick stroke to a minimum. Good. Okay. Okay, so let's check this from one final angle. So I want you to notice how my wrist is related to the guitar here. I'm not curled up like this, and I can still palm mute even with my side of my thumb there. The pad of the thumb is rolled into the guitar, and that way when I do my back and forth motion with the wrist, it's in the plane of the strings, you see. Alright, so it's very minimal muscular exertion and very minimal motion is required to manipulate the strings from this angle. Now notice that I'm actually on the guitar. So let's see how this looks as I go across the strings. Notice how I'm moving the whole arm and hand and wrist. Okay, so that the pick angle stays the same across all the strings. Okay, so now you're going to have to do other things sometimes than this. This is not always going to be the perfect pick hold, pick approach, because when you're playing rhythm, for instance, totally different approach. This is for playing individual notes such as you would in a solo, and you may sometimes wish to emphasize a particular note. You're gonna make some variations on your technique for whatever you're trying to do, but generally for as a basis for playing scales, this is a good starting point. So the way to master this technique is to, of course, just to practice scales. Now let me add one note here. You will notice that my thumb is actually in contact with the strings as I go across. I'm muting the strings that I have already picked and moved across, so that's an additional side benefit. And finally, let me point out that down here on this end of the strings, I have my extra fingers here. My pinky and my ring finger are sort of resting on the pick guard. They are not planted. I don't ever plant the fingers here because that would require me to scrunch up my wrist to get across the strings. These fingers are sliding across the pick guard as is necessary to allow me to do what I need to do in terms of maintaining my pick hold and pick angle here. Okay, so once again, the key here is just to practice slowly scales using this technique until you can do it freely and naturally without having to give it a great deal of thought. Okay, so as always, practice, practice, practice.